in addition to Iran, I've heard Lebanon used to be pretty secular as well.
Yeah. Culturally Christian, but secular, yeah.
And that's also, is that been taken over by
same time?
Islam?
Yeah.
So is that going to happen here?
Well, I mean, when you listen to people like Douglas Murray, they would say yes. And there is a point about, even back in the day, Islam's ideology itself, not necessarily the actual faith, because you can still be culturally Muslim. You're like, I'm just a Muslim. But the ideology itself, from day one, was based on expansion. It never succeeded when it comes to preaching, unlike Christianity. For example, Judaism was not based on preaching. They're like, yeah, we're just Jews, leave us alone.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't want you in our religion.
That's why people hate us.
It's very hard to become a Jew.
Yeah.
You'll be rejected
We're
three
not letting
times.
you in.
Yeah.
We're doing our thing over here. Exactly. We're not going to tell you what it is. Right?
Yeah. Christianity was based on spreading the word. And that was working. And of course, when it became establishments with Vatican, it became accelerated. But then the Islamic ideology was basically from day one. There's a sword on the as a symbol because it's based on expansion. Mm-hmm. But even that didn't fully work. The short term they had the Muslim Empire and they got to Spain, and then the Crusades happened. They had to go back. But even from day one, the second method was to simply have a lot of babies. And they still have a lot of babies. That's what the Jewish population in the Middle East is still going down because the Jews are becoming more middle class and they don't have babies anymore, like here.
Yeah.
But the Islamic cultures, wherever they are, they have a lot of babies. They're actually helping humanity, as Elon Musk would say. But actually, Christians and Jews have babies because this is how the West will fall. The Western Europe will fall. It's not necessarily by Islamic tanks crossing borders. Demographic will change. And this is not supposed to be like a xenophobic rant. This is simply an objective observation about the culture will change. Let's just say objectively, not saying if this country becomes culturally Islamic is good or bad, but I'm just saying it's on the road because the birth rate, forget about the small boats crisis that more people are coming in, even the birth rate compared to the Christians and Jews, for example, or even like primarily secular atheists not having babies. They're even scared of getting married. But then 20 years, be generous. A lot of the more younger people who are children now from the Islamic side, and they are becoming more empowered anyway. They are more politically active. We just saw from the local elections, a lot of them were elected, fair enough, as councillors.
Moth and Ali.
Yeah. But then 20 years, 30 years, they'll be their children who will be adults. And all you need is 20%, 30% of House of Commons becoming a unified culture or mentality, let's just say, because we're talking about the Islamic, so it could be anything. And by default, that's a collective, that's a tribe. They will have the power to change the constitution legally and democratically. Change the constitution, shut down the pubs because we don't like beer, for example, or whatever, right? So you don't even have to have the Iranian Revolution sort of thing. It's a demographic change. And what are you going to do about it? Because it's democratic.
Yeah.
See? If you fight against it, like if you say like mass deportations now, first you have to then clarify, who do you mean? Do you mean just anybody who's a Muslim? Because you can't do that, but that's a little bit authoritarian, right? And what are you going to do? What's the other solution? Purge? You're going to do Hunger Games? You're going to go attack people just because they're Muslim? So any solution that's violence, right? Or that's radical. That means democratically, demographic change, it will happen anyway. So legally and constitutionally, you can't do anything about it. That's the problem. So unless there's one solution that's kind of worked for humanity, and that was also working in Jordan, Lebanon, Iran, and Syria.
I'm desperate to hear what the solution. I feel like I want to say to people, you're going to find out after the break what the solution to this is.
Make humans rich.
Wow.
Make them rich. Prosperity. That by default makes you, it will take a while, obviously, generation-wise, educated and civilized, because you have to behave next to your neighbor because your neighbor is behaving, wearing better suits. And then by default, you'll have more responsibilities, more jobs, and more businesses, and that causes stress. When you have those daily stress, then you're not concerned about ideological causes.
Except for Osama bin Laden and some of the others.
Well, yeah, they're the grifters, basically. But my point is that what I'm providing as a solution is actually what's happened to the rest of the Western world, so the Christians and Jews. And long term, that becomes a problem. It's a cycle of doom, because the reason we are complacent is because over the last 100 years or so, we became more educated and civilized and, professional jobs, businesses. Then by default, you then become too stressed about those things, then you don't even get married and you get divorces. And these sort of things happen, and liberalism will go up. Too much liberalism, secular liberalism will go up. So what's happened to us, basically like a virus, we need to give that virus to the rest of the world as well. And the tribes that some might call, they're still backwards, or they're still not developed or civilized. And that's why they're angry, and they're still focused on like ideological causes.
But many of these countries where a lot of the radicalism is coming from are extremely rich, oil rich.
Yeah, but those countries, like for example, like Saudi and obviously like in Syria at the time, they shut them down. Dictatorship as a norm in those cultures, because they can't really have democracy unless the culture is ready for it, was working to an extent because they were shutting down those voices, the few crazies.
Yeah.
But then with all the stuff that happened with the American interventions in the Middle East, it kind of put up the lid a little bit. It got out of control. Then the ISIS were created and all the Al-Qaedas. And even the dictators, even Saddam, if he was here, he would be like, and the guy was a tyrant, he was evil. But he would be like, I told you so. He would say that. It's a big issue because Saudi, they have a policy to deal with the likes of bin Laden even now. Bin Laden just went rogue. But they always have the bin Ladens. They just keep them rich and keep them like, okay, if you have any like dodgy dealings, go do behind the scenes with, I don't know, CIA or Mossad. And I'm kind of simplifying it. But sometimes they get out and shit happens.
I feel like, again, the issue of getting richer is like, I mean, the poorest people now are significantly wealthier in terms of what their comforts and things than they were 100 years ago. So to an extent, humanity feels, I mean, you're comparing to other people, aren't you? So there's always going to have to be people who are at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to be pissed off.
By rich, I'm not talking about make everybody millionaires. I'm just saying richer than like absolute poverty. Just the riches, the prosperity as a society, basically do what we're supposed to be doing anyway. Growth. And obviously, if you listen to socialists, they say, well, redistribute the current wealth. I'm like, no, just create more wealth. and everybody will actually benefit. It's simply saying, make people also feel that they have opportunities, but not in a patronizing way, in a peer pressure way. The Anglo-Saxon, the British mentality, which then created the American mentality, because some of them went rogue here. They're like, yeah, we want to be even more free, so we're going to leave England and Ireland, for example. It basically, it's not really just giving them opportunities to start your own businesses. You force them, peer pressure. This culture is based on, oh, my neighbors just started a business. I'm going to have to do the same thing because, I hate that one. I'm jealous. You do that. Everything is about peer pressure.
Yeah.
Like, look at TikTok, look at Instagram, the whole obsession with social media trends. We just follow what the other person is doing.
Yeah.
We all become sheeple. So use that for an advantage. Saying but right now, when you have a couple of people in, objectively speaking, what we call ghettos, like in a part of Birmingham or Luton or East London, they are still living in the West. So when my mother came here and myself, we were in Southeast London. So for us, it's about which part of the glass you see, the half full or whatever the other side. So but we still saw the working class Southeast, but for us, we're like, oh, there's still McDonald's there. Oh, there's Primark. That's cheap clothes, but we could afford it compared to like Iran. So for us, this was prosperity. But right now, there are people in like East London, and it becomes ghettos in a sense that when they leave the house, when they walk to shops, everybody will speak the same language. They don't have to even meet a white person to speak English. So psychologically, I have a feeling it still reminds them of the original country, which didn't have opportunities. So then they see central London and the white people on TV, for example, or on their phones. And I have a feeling psychologically, somehow, they still think they're somewhere else. And they're like, we don't have those opportunities. You're still in London. But they don't feel. So they make themselves more isolated. But it's became a government policy as well. Why did you send everybody in one place? Like idiots.